would be, you can always go more restrictive, but not less.
So based on that, would that impact your recommendation one way or the other? Would we want to vet that based on the asset right now that Chris brought up? Do we know where that came from and what our limitations would be?
Where it was purchased? That was purchased.
Well, let's find out.
Pretty sure operating funds, but so that would
vet that
yes, we can vet
before,
that. I will have
so
that ready.
We get into the budget thing, if
Yeah.
it determines how the Chesapeake is going.
It wouldn't, I don't think it would come out, that is a capital project, so it wouldn't come out of that fund.
No, I get it.
And the other land, I think, didn't we put it back, didn't it go into,
Correct.
Yeah. Just since we're trying to find out all the variables.
Correct.
Insomnia. No, I won't have insomnia for this.
Okay, well.
I mean, and these don't have to be answered now, but I'm just like looking through on the revenue, and I think you touched on it probably on the rental income moving over to an education fund, but like, how do we get these huge increases in like athletic admissions, other rental income, I guess, where is that coming, could you just explain where that's coming out of, that it's, 400, oh, sorry, page 14 of
So I can answer one of those right off. That question about the athletics, that's doing with some more reclassification of funds that were flowing into student activities that after closer review, we've determined should not go into student activities and would need to come into the general fund. So those will be recorded into there and then expended appropriately. Well, they're always expended appropriately, but at least the track within the general fund. So what was your other? Let's see, so rental
like athletic admissions and admissions other and rental income.
Right. Well, the athletics I just added, that was the tournaments.
Okay.
And we're going to be collecting, recording that and expenditures accordingly. I'll need to look into admissions others. We can research that.
Rental.
Well, the rental income, that is the auditorium. So if you look at 1910 category, 1910 rental, that $100,000 increase is the auditorium. So we'll be recording that. We set up an individual fund to help track those expenses, not fund, individual subject within our ed fund to track those, and we're recording the revenue in ed also.
And then where are athletic rentals and like field rentals?
Okay,
field
so
house
those
rentals?
are Fund 20 because they're the rental of facilities. So you would go in Fund 20, there, well, if you go to the revenue page, it's easier to see it, but that's page 31. So that's under rental revenue, page 31 in 1910. You can see it was 440 this year, it's only 247 next year. That's because we took out that auditorium. The auditorium, the tough thing there is a lot of the, it's kind of a grade, facility rentals go to O&M. Why auditorium not O&M? Well, because there's a lot of things to go in. There's the equipment and the staff, and that's not O&M. And so we just, for accounting purposes, it's easier to put it into the ed fund.
And then some of these, so going in the education fund, and I'll just use one example. So special education, 1,200. When you're looking at the variance in the actual, the budget on salaries, for example, is this just some more pinpointing of where salaries are actually assigned, or are we actually increasing salaries on special education by 14.5%?
No, this is our, if you remember last year this time I said, it's a multi-year process. this is more of our refining and defining correctly where everybody's being charged. And so we still had some of that didn't get 100% corrected in the prior year. And so we're working more diligently on that again this year. But it's very critical, especially with special education, that the state wants things charged to a specific function. On a function level, it's critical that things are accounted for according to the Illinois Program Common Manual. So that's what that is. It's not a 14% increase in special education.
And then, so 1,500 interscholastics, what falls under there? Is that athletics plus
Activities.
activities that are included in there? And then, last one for now, and you explained the student activities fees, but we have in the budget a transfer of expense from student activities. So are we actually being charged through?
What page are you on?
I'm on your summary sheet. I don't know where it is in here, but because I don't know if but it's on the second page, about 5 down. Transfer of expenses from student activities, $164,000.
I'll have to look at that. Sorry, I don't have.
No, that's
So
fine.
I believe, Brad, those were the expenses that had been charged to student activities in prior years will now be moved over to the budget side. Am I correct with that, Brad?
Yes.
Is that cool, like, were you referring to athletic conditions?
Correct. These are the things, right?
That would
so,
be an expense.
Right.
so
No.
we increase
We're taking away the revenue.
and we're increasing the expenditures.
So for instance, they would take a fee for them hosting a wrestling tournament and then turn around and use that amount to pay for a soccer tournament. So rather than having both the expense and the revenue on the student activity side, it's being brought onto the budget side.
So it's an increase on the revenue and an increase on the expenditure.
Okay, so there's an offsetting
Yes.
entry.
And as Brad said, over the next 3 weeks, any more questions, please email us, we can answer those.
Shoot me an email, I'll update the PowerPoint, we'll have some question and answer. Really, next meeting, we'll just go question and answer. You'll send me your questions, I'll get them answered, we can discuss things, and make sure we're ready to go.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
2019 cash flow.
Yeah, it's just going to keep going. Cash flows, Brad?
2019 cash flow.
Yes, give me 2 seconds. So with the preparation or the first draft of the budget done, we were completely put together the cash flows for the district based on the budget. So with the cash flows, the first thing you would notice as you start to go through that we are really maximizing interfund loans. With the estimated increase in interest rate, the longer we can go having to draw, the better. So you'll notice we're doing some transfers between funds, which is allowed by school code. We'll be coming to the board to ask for approval, but those are built into the budget, and we'll just bring them and have them approved. We're estimating that by the highest cash deficit we will need will be about $17 million, which is substantial improvement over the prior year. All indication right now, we've got a firm commitment if the board acts before September 30th from Old Second. They've given us a good rate of 2.95% tax exempt. And but there's a 90% probability that the feds will increase rates on September 30th. So if we don't commit prior, there's a chance that the rates would be higher. Also within the assumptions, we're assuming that we'll collect 100% of our revenue. We're assuming we'll expend 100% of the budget, and the inflows and outflows are based on the individual tracking that we've done all this year. So we're kind of, the old cash flow we were working on, I've scrapped that. We're going off of how things flew, and we're going in 18. So with that, it's in your packet, and answer any questions you have on the cash flows.
It looks good to me. Showing some progress. We're borrowing less and borrowing over a shorter period of time. I think we had the 2018 one in there. We borrowed, our first draw was in November, and this one we wouldn't draw until January 16th. So, and at the end, we had $9 million outstanding at the end of this year, and this shows we have $2 million outstanding. So that's
All right.
really good.
So to act on those clause by September 30th will be at the next meeting?
I'm sorry, what?
Be on the 20th, September 20th.
September 20th.
Yeah, September 20th. And then, Brad, what will our authorization amount be with Old Second? I know we're anticipating 17 million. What will the authorization?
I think that we'll have a good discussion. I mean, last year we went probably up 3 million over. So as we refine, look at this cash flow one more time, we'll probably come back with all the resolutions, said it's like 20 million. Not to exceed 20 million, just to give us that little space. So.
Are we going to do the inter-fund transfer at the next meeting as well?
We'll look at them, and as we need them, we'll have them prepared. We'll do them one at a time as they come up, and so we'll be prepared with those. So, really, if we want to slide right into the tax anticipation warrants, included in your packets the timeline that we would need to follow. It'd be my recommendation, given the high probability that the feds would be looking at another rate increase in September, that we go ahead and get the documents started rolling. We would, the board approved last year working with Ice Miller. They gave us a price for 3 years. So I would like to just go ahead and continue to work with them, get everything together, and then we'll have all that for you guys to start looking at August 30th in preparation for adoption on the 20th. I did confirm with Ice Miller that even though our tax levy would not be technically filed with the county at the time we pass the parameters resolution, as long as it's in the agenda after the adoption of the tax levy, it's okay for us to go ahead and adopt the parameters resolution to borrow on the tax levy. So we'd look to do all of that in September 20th, adopt the budget, adopt the tax levy, and adopt the resolution, parameters resolution for the TAWs, so that we can make a firm commitment with Old Second prior to September 30th rate increases.
Are we still going to be required to escrow?
I didn't discuss that with them. I certainly can. I myself have found that not to be much of an issue for us. I know they like that. It's worked well for us too. I feel it's kind of a two-way street. I think it's been okay for us, and they like it. I can certainly, if there's a concern, I can approach that with them. I think we certainly have excellent credit with them. So I think if we wanted to remove the intercept, I doubt they would object.
If it's not causing an issue.
Yeah, the intercept is built into the cash flow. I just assumed we would continue with that. So I'm certainly fine with it. Cash flow wise, I think it works okay for us.
Do we have any discussions with any other source other than Old Second?
We haven't. I certainly can. We're certainly in a better position. We won't have an audited financial by then, and we don't have an upgrade on our rating other than the negative off. But we certainly could take out Steelers from other areas if the board would like for that.
What was the rate last year?
Last year is 1.65 tax exempt, and they're quoting 2.95 this year based on the increases that they've seen with the feds.
Outpaced the Fed.
Yes.
What's that?
They're raising the rate more than the Fed is raising.
Yeah.
They're
They're
assuming,
already assuming the 30th.
They're
so-
assuming, yeah.
Well, I'd be more than glad to do some more research and actually even, contact some other people if that's what the desire of the board.
Good rate.
I think we have to. I mean, I think we have to.
Okay.
I think just to keep things fair.
Right. Yeah, all
Not,
right.
not that they haven't been a great partner, and hopefully nobody interprets that we're being disrespectful, but I just think we have to ask.
Okay, I will certainly do that. For the 30th meeting, we'll have some other information for the board to consider.
Can you just also have when we locked last year into that rate?
What time?
Yeah, what date it was?
We locked last year at the October meeting, remember? So October 13th, I think it was. So it's, but then, the Fed wasn't moving on things, and things were a little more flatter, if you will.
Again, please don't interpret our relationship with them as anything less than they've been more than fair over the last 3 years. It just needs to,
Right.
I guess I would be concerned by doing this, we run the risk of running out of the source. Well, I mean, if we go start shopping around, maybe Old Second, some guy says, you guys, you've been good to you for 3 years, you're gonna go.
We're a public body. It's not,
Yeah,
it's
it
not
means
my
that.
personal home loan that
I
I.
understand, but
no, you're right.
there's not a lot of people that are clamoring to get into this.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
Well, I also think that Old Second understands that we have a fiduciary responsibility to our community. I don't think that'll be an issue, and we have a great working relationship with Old Second, and, we do invest as much of our surplus funds with them as we can, and they've been good at rates that way, from the treasurer's report. I'm not concerned at all. I think they would understand, hey, we have to do our homework too,
Yep.
Okay, we'll have that for the next meeting.
Good questions. Anything else? 5-year financial.
5-year financial forecast.
Crystal ball.
To find out, I'm an accountant, not an IT person, so let's see what I can do here.
Red, do you need water?
Actually, that would be wonderful. Oh, thank you. Okay. Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, tonight's presentation is meant to be an interactive process, so please, I know I get rolling, but stop me if you have questions. Let's just talk with them as we're going, and as we're presenting here, how we're. So, as you know, the 5-year financial forecast, or what we love to call 5cast, is a comprehensive interactive planning tool the district uses in its budget development, tax levy determination, and just general future planning. It's an interactive planning model with hundreds of assumptions that affect the model's output. As you know, the longer the planning horizon, the less certain the results will be, as events that affect the district's financials are always changing. This is an interactive tool, though, and we can prepare what we call what-if scenarios based on changes in assumptions. Tonight we'll look at only two scenarios, what I call the base scenario and the worst scenario. What FiveCast is not a static document that will remain unchanged in the future. In fact, the FiveCast model needs to be an ever-evolving model, or it will become worthless in guiding the district's future. The elements that drive the projections are listed here on the screen and are provided to PMA, which loads them into the FiveCast software. And please note, different from the budget, all graphs here will focus on the operating funds, which are Ed, O&M, transportation, IMRF, working cash, and tort, excluding debt service and capital projects, unless I specifically loop one of those in, and I'll tell you when they are. The software has two major calculators. These calculators, the first on the revenue side, calculates out our taxes. It calculates out 72% of all the revenue in the projections. And the other is the calculator for salaries and benefits, which calculate out 73% of the expenditures. The remaining revenue and expenditures are adjusted in the model by manual input based on the appropriate assumptions. So the base model. This is the operating funds revenue for 2019 original budget here on the screen. As you can see, as I've mentioned earlier, the district is very dependent on property taxes, which is a positive thing, 72%. The district's current operating budget is a key building block for the forecast and is assumed to accurately reflect district operations. As you've already mentioned in the budget, we have two types of levies we collect. We have our tax levy that's capped, our operating levy, or we have our debt service, which is collected unless abated. Here is the Consumer Price Index, which is the single largest revenue assumption within the FiveCast model, since it controls the estimated increase in 72% of the district's revenue. For fiscal year 2019, so right here, the district will rely on about 50% of the 2017 tax. Wait, am I saying that correctly? Yes, 2017 tax, which was set in October, and 50% of the 2018 tax levy, which is based on the December 17 CPI of 2.5. What we put in here for our projections, we projected out, we've got 9 years of history here, green bars. The orange bars are the Wall Street Journal's projections at that time. And then finally we got our blue bars, which is our projections, and the purple bars are our projections, and the blue bars are the Wall Street economist projections in the future. So you can see for levy year 19, which will be based on the 2018 CPI, we're projecting 2.51. Okay, that's high, higher than in prior. Right now, as of June 2018, the year-over-year CPI is 2.9. So they're anticipating a little lag as we go into the last of the year. The second key factor in predicting revenue is the district's new property growth. As I mentioned in the budget presentation, we will continue with $50 million in the future. The district received $52 million of new property growth this last year, which generated about an additional $1 million in tax revenue. I already spoke about the EAV. And we're projecting that by 19, we will beat our historical prior high in 2008. This graph, unlike the one and the other, this reflects the total change in equalized assessed value, which includes new property and property reassessment. You can see in 17 we had an actual 3.74, and we're projecting 3.81 in 18. What is this projection? This projection actually only affects our tax rate, as the district actually levies in whole dollars. So as our property values go up, if our tax levy is lower than the percentage increase in the EAV, then our tax rate declines. And we are seeing that here. So you see we're estimating a small decline in the 2018 actual tax levy. As I already spoke earlier, we're looking at holding the corporate personal property tax flat at $512,000. We've adjusted for students' interest income. We expect interest income to continue to increase in the district at a rate of about 15% as we anticipate increased rates and increased fund balance, except for Fund 60 where we're expending. Food service, we expect revenue to be up 3%, and basically all other areas have been held flat. State and federal, we anticipate not much change in the evidence-based funding. We're just looking at it to be fully funded and at the fiscal year 18 level, which is 11% lower than what we collected this prior year. As far as the other categoricals, we're looking at those to remain pretty much flat, along with the federal revenue. This is a graphical representation of the district's operating funds by major revenue source. You can see that local resources will make up about 89% of our total funding throughout this time, throughout this projections. We expect operating revenue to be at right at $104 million by 2024. Now, given our ever and changing environment, it's prudent for us that we should investigate the sensitivity of assumptions within the model and determine the impact of any one of these changes on the model. Literally, we could run thousands of what-if scenarios to try and model all possible assumptions. However, the best way, though, is just to look at a sensitivity analysis and determine the importance of each variable within the model. Listed here are the three largest revenue variables within the model. So, for each 1% change in CPI, up or down, that's a $670,000 change. Now that is split over 2 fiscal years because we collect half the levy in one and half in the other. So we're predicting 2.5% CPI for 19. Well, what happens if it is really only 1.5? Well, that'd be $670,000 less in revenue split over 19 and 20. Just as with revenue, the original operating budget is the key building block on the expenditure side. This chart here is a representation of that, in which you can see 73% of the district's expenditures are within salaries and benefits, making those assumptions paramount within the expenditure projections. All salary and benefit assumptions are based on actual individual staff contracts, adjusted for known retirements, union contracts, historical changes, or other changes as determined by the Board of Education. Mainly speaking on benefits, we're anticipating the 19 to be flat and then 3% increase thereafter. As far as overall teaching staff, we're -2 FTEs in fiscal year 19, and we expect to have a -2 in fiscal year 2020 with flat thereafter. This is the operating expenditures graph here. You can see the increases there. Based on slightly declining staffing and all of the aforementioned salaries and benefit assumptions, the district expects salaries and benefits to reach about $70.7 million by fiscal year 2024. It's graphed here. Additional assumptions, we see we plan on private education tuition to increase by 3%, District 843 by 3% in the future, natural gas by 2%, and then the shift, $2.2 million shift from the capital fund to the O&M, and special ed transportation up, bus leases up, and finally a reduction, as I mentioned, in the IMRF rate. We will see that. We anticipate, well, we know, we've already got our notice, that's going down 2.38%. And then finally, we've had a reduction in this year's workers' comp, but we're not sure that will continue. We built in 3% into the future. This is a graphic display of the district's expenditures by major type. So based on all the aforementioned assumptions, the district expects total expenditures to reach about $98.5 million by 2024. And you can see there those yellow lines. So now this is operating, so as it comes from Fund 60, non-operating fund, into an operating fund, you can see the increase in our capital. Sensitivity analysis, same thing. Salaries is the largest item. So for each 1% change in salaries overall, it'd be $537,000 more. For each 1% in health, dental, and life, it'd be $68,000. This is a summary. All assumptions are then accumulated into an individual financial profile or pro forma, which the final aggregate is in the projection files I've given in the board docs, each of the details. I gave the detail for the operating and the summary for the all funds. So remember that when you're looking at the operating, it does not include debt service or capital projects, but the all funds summary does. This is operating, so this is our graph of revenue and expenditures throughout the years. You can see revenue is outpacing expenditures, and we do meet policy 420. This chart graphically displays the cumulative fund balance for all operating funds, the red line, plus the district's estimated low cash point, which is the purple line. You can see there how we're increasing and reducing our dependency on TAWs. The individual bars, which you see running up and down here, they represent the actual individual funds, and you can see them. You can see there the ed fund actually was negative. Now we're coming back positive. The district is projecting by 2024 that the district's operating fund surplus should begin to restore and well into it and reduce our reliance on tax anticipation warrants. This is just a close-up of that actual same graph. This is modeling of fund balance 420 policy. So as you know, we need to have a surplus of at least 3%, and the red line here indicates our 3% and where we're at in achieving above that 3%. This is our fund balance, cumulative fund balance, and with the same thing, fund balance policy 420 graph there by the red line, we're anticipating that our fund balance will increase by over $20 million over the next 5 years while providing adequate financial resources to our students. This is that timeline and goal. According to policy 420, the district's goal is to increase its operating funds balance by at least 3% per fiscal year, and we've established this following timeline to meet that. Please note that this timeline will be updated each time we get audited actual results. So, like in this year, where we beat it, we would then, if we did better in 19, it'd be updated, and then 3%. We'll keep shaving off as we move ahead. Finally then, we want to move into what I call the worst case, and it's, I don't know, I guess some people, anyway, it might not be the absolute worst case. I'm sure I could have made it worse, but it's certainly look at how it could be. So, no changes in expenditures. Why is that? Well, because we're in control of expenditures, and so we can adjust here or there where we need to make sure we hit within what we have budgeted for. As far as revenue then, that's where it's beyond our control, especially the further we get out. So the change in CPI, prorating of evidence-based funding at 93%, but then no other changes in the revenue stream. So we did in this one, we could model different ones, and I would open for whatever the board would like to model. We just modeled out at 2.1% flat. So what's that do? Under this model, the assumptions, the district operating fund is projected to hit 26.62%, or about 3.8% below Fund Policy 420 by 2024. So we will be under the board's policy. This is a graph of revenue and expenditure. While operating revenue exceeds expenditure, it does not exceed expenditures to the amount needed to meet the board's goal of 3%. So in that case, we would need to be looking at making some adjustments in expenditures in order to meet that goal. This is a graphic of that thing, one of our actual fund balance. This is the actual surpluses graphed against the district's fund balance 420. You can see in fiscal year 19 and in fiscal year 20 and 21, the district does not make the individual years 3%. What that does do is it also throws us off on the accumulative. Now, of course, we would make adjustments, so we made sure we did, but if we didn't, then we'd be in what you call catch-up mode. And so then it would be difficult. We would then be on a cumulative basis. We'd be off in fiscal year 19, or we'd only be on in fiscal year 19 and 24, or all the other years we would not be to the 3% threshold. Okay, questions on the 5-cast?
Your worst case scenario held everything flat going forward, right?
Right. CPI.
What the worst case scenario be? 0?
Well.
Easy.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I should have said called it another option. Because definitely worst case would be, I guess, 0.
I think we just have to work on making it a little more pessimistic in your worst case. But I do think there was value in showing that if you just move down, how very sensitive these long-term models are to the inputs, because you made a very slight adjustment to CPI and moved the state funding from 100 to 93%. So very modest changes. I mean, you're talking 2.5 in CPI to 2.1, 2.34 to 2.1 in those 19, 20, 21, and you fall below that line. So, I mean, I think it does make the point that, this is a very sensitive model to the inputs. If we're going to do a worst case, I think we have to think about like new property growth going back to, not at 50 million, but that goes back down to wherever it hit the low point. And, CPI taking it down a little bit more, probably not to 0, but, taking it down to, maybe 1% or something like that. Something similar to what happened in 2015, 2016. I mean, maybe not even in these couple of years. And I think, the state of Illinois, nothing's going to happen until an election year, but I still don't think they have a sustainable budget, so looking at, things that they might throw out there too, like a pension shift or property tax freeze and stuff like that. I think that's what I would kind of try and model on the worst case. And otherwise, we have the sensitivities, but I think in a worst case scenario, you have the teacher's contract would be, potentially have to be renegotiated if there was a pension freeze. So we have that language in there. So, when I go through a worst case, I think that's what we should.
So I have a question about the CPI, the Wall Street Journal, their estimates. Is there any other entity that really estimates CPI?
I'm not aware of any, but I certainly research it.
I'm not aware of any either.
There are a multitude of places that forecast inflation, CPI, whatever you want to put on it. So you're just picking at it. Brad, I would go on that worst case scenario, and I'm going to be Debbie Downer here, I guess. We've run a 10-year expansionary economy. We're due for a recession. You were using a 90% of the Fed increase when you were pitching pause. There's percentages of when some type of recessionary impact will hit our economy. I think that's what you need to look at when you're building a worst case scenario. Now, again, it's a percentage. I get it. It's a guess. But this thing now has us running into 2024 with no real retraction. And I'd like to think you're right, but I think that when we get to that worst case scenario, especially when Chris brought up earlier tonight, things like capital outlay, other things that may create commitment over a longer period of time, because of how locally we are dependent on local, or how dependent we are on local property taxes, we just need to know. And it's going to happen. It's not a question of if, it'll be when. And I know I've had conversations with you and Dr. Tingley about watching certain indicators. So that's what I would suggest in the worst case scenario, is build in a recessionary type scenario.
Okay.
Not necessarily the 2008, 9, 10 scenario, but it will happen. And to not think it won't happen would be silly.
Okay, we'll put some different things together for next update.
Would you want us then to adjust the expenditure model based upon what we would be facing in terms of, the ongoing capital projects, the
Right, I think we need to come up with a list of
Whatever.
a list
other
of
discretionary-
potential
Some type of
reductions.
prioritization, right, I would say, so that people would know. Because that's what this should do. What ifs? And to Brad's point, there's 1,000 different points with 1,000 different scenarios. But you grab onto one that says, here's what happens if we step off the road. Because to your point, I could go and be, Joey Jolly here and say that there's nothing in here talking about like land being sold or anything else that would accelerate short-term debt being reduced.
1%.
And other positives that would happen, or some major infrastructure capital valuation that goes into the deal. It was pushed away recently, but that whole North Point project could rear its head again. And that's part in this district. So, you could turn around and turn the frown upside down and say, hey, look, this is what's going to happen, in 5 years on an overly positive scenario as well. So, but I'm more leaning toward 2020 will probably be a time when you want to start to build in a little bit. It's gonna hurt. That's what my magic 8 ball said. Yes.
I think it's very helpful to have these.
It's huge, yeah. So, Brett, thank you. It's a lot of work put into this.
Extremely transparent to him. He throws it out. This is
Right.
what everybody thinks.
Right. extremely helpful.
Okay, we'll have an update for, we'll have another scenario for our next meeting.
We're scheduled for October again, am I right, Brad? Would that?
Yeah, but I was thinking we might come back sooner since we've had some good feedback here. I'd like to just jump on it.
Okay, we'll be right on it.
Go, Brad, you go. Thank you. Well done.
All right, where are we?
Informational items.
All right, informational items. First one, report of Lincoln Way Special Education District 843. Ron?
Yes, two significant things. One was the budget that we approved earlier tonight. We went over that. And the other one, significance is keeping our business manager on a part-time basis. We approved another 200 hours for him. Craig comes in evenings, weekends. Because of his full-time status in the past, when he comes in, he hits the ground running, so we get a lot of bang for our buck. So we're going to continue moving with him, not looking to replace with a full-time business manager at this time. Everybody seems to be pretty happy with it, and costs are down. That pretty much concludes my report.
Great. Any questions for Ron regarding 843? Not FOIA request.
For requests are included in your backup materials. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Any questions regarding any of the FOIA requests? Audit findings.
Audit findings, no change. We're beginning the process now, and we'll be next August and September here will be our audit months.
Any questions regarding the audit
I
findings?
did make one comment to Scott earlier, I spoke to him this week, and that was, there's a lot of audit findings on there from 16, 17 that we are complete, and I suggested that once we get this next audit done, that we start taking them off the books, or keep them on another tab as part of that file, but you don't need to continue to have us done.
I think they were done like after the year, after this fiscal year
Right.
started, so I think they stay on there because they were technically on the last audit.
So we'll be able to do
Big
an
enough
update
to
this
keep all,
fall.
but
Yeah.
just keep, first tab is our active tab.
Right.
Should there be any additional new ones? Okay.
Any other feedback or comments? Thank you, Chris. First reading, amend policy 120.
The policy 120 is the organizational chart, so I would just ask the board to review. We've got the old one in there. I've proposed a new one. We can discuss that between now and the next meeting. We can also discuss it at the next meeting, but just put a proposed organizational chart in there for your review. That's something we should at least take a look at annually.
I think we should talk about it a little bit.
Yeah,
Because it does make some changes here.
There are some changes, correct. So the major change is the removal of Tim Riley as assistant superintendent. And so we moved Rob Schiffbauer, director of personnel, over to the other side. And so you do have the director of finance, buildings and grounds, and transportation that will still answer to Mr. Kaufman. And then the principals, director of staff, director of instruction staff development, the data assessment, special services, community relations, and personnel will answer to myself. And so this is something that Mr. Kirking and I have discussed in terms of the transition plan. This is something that's going to continue to be fluid here over the next year as we continue to move through the transition of the retirement of Tim.
Your feedback would obviously be very much appreciated over the next 30 days, but it is a step in the process as we move forward, and it does allow for that position to be limited.
And we've I believe made progress in this over the last 3 years, and we'll continue to use this as a model moving forward.
Cleaner than it was. All right. Any other questions? Buildings and ground report.
Buildings and grounds report is included in your backup materials. If you have any questions, I'm sure Mr. Workey would be happy to answer those.
I actually have one.
Okay.
On the, that natural gas that was, I think it was in October, where we purchased the natural gas storage. That was never utilized.
We currently have, our storage is 60% full right now. We'll be moving into the next fiscal year with 60% storage, which really.
Which was that everything that was bought in that October timeframe still? or-
Actually, no, we bought, I don't remember the percentage, it may have been around 50% at that time. But each month, if we don't use our allocation, a little bit more goes into storage. So we're estimating our usage each month, buying the gas in advance. Which right now gas is very cheap, so it's good.
Natural gas.
Natural
Natural gas, yeah.
I had a question about the projects over the summer. We're on track for opening day, I guess we call it. with the-
At this point, we are. Tennis courts are in really good shape. They'll open on Monday. Parking lot is substantially complete. Some punch sites to go. The bleachers in the East Gym will be turned over on August 10th with some training. I have some concern about some of the door and hardware work with the life safety renovations. And did ask the contractor to increase manpower moving forward to ensure that they're well, substantially complete by the first day of school. They put their carpentry sub on notice to increase manpower. They say they're going to comply. In the event they don't, we do have another contractor lined up.
Anything else for Rick? Any relations?
Community Relations Report is included in your backup materials for your review.
Any questions regarding the community relations report? Asset of the month.
Support systems at home give family members a hug every day and eat a meal together, which I know is difficult to do with everybody's busy schedules. At school, focus on the positive during conferences and teacher meetings. In the community, offer workshops for parents, provide publicized family crisis hotlines.
Thank you. Next, legislative report.
No report.
Building security.
Just a quick update, and I was asked to just kind of give an update on where we are. The secure building entrances, now the cameras are on track to be open, ready to go for the first day of school. There'll be correspondence from the principal's home in terms of the process. You know, if a parent brings a lunch for Johnny, they'll get buzzed into the first door. There'll be a table there, a Post-it, write the name on it, set it down, and go on their way. And then the next passing period, they'll be able to grab those items that might have been forgotten. You know, our scheduling, our visits will now be by appointment only. You know, obviously, if the school nurse calls home, they'll call the SSO to let them know that parent is coming. So, new processes and procedures for getting in the building every day will now be in place. We'll make some adjustments adjustments have been made to the schedule for doors to be open in each building. In terms of an early morning door, it'll be one door for the early morning arrivers. At East, it will be two because of the access of both parent drop-off and the buses is not conducive to do so. There will be deans manning those doors from the time they are unlocked until the time those doors are locked at the beginning of the school day. And so we've developed those schedules. We'll be sharing those schedules with the deans and then also then during the orientation with the students. The other item, and we discussed this last year, and probably the most important item of prevention is to continue to encourage students that if they hear something, they see something, that they let us know. And we've been very fortunate that our students do bring concerns to our administrative team, and that's something through our asset program and PPS we will continue to develop and work on. We have made minor adjustments to our active shooter and disaster drills that we will go over with our faculty and staff on the Institute Day. Those are at the recommendations of Will County, but those different plans will continue to be evaluated as we move forward. You know, really, every time these unfortunate occurrences happen, there becomes different information, different literature, different best practice, and so we continue to do our best to stay up to date and work with our local authorities on that. Any questions that anybody might have?
Are we going to send out a communication on the new procedures for?
We are. That's going to come from the principals to the parents. Yes, correct. And included in that will be some of the timeframes of the doors.
Who gets key cards to the buildings? How's that working?
Well, faculty and staff. So and we'll continue to work through that as we implement this process and procedure.
So there are no.
Chris's comment that communication is going to be key
Yep.
over the
It will
next
be.
3 weeks, and probably should be multiple if possible.
Yep.
Even to tell people to anticipate the communication.
Yep. Yep.
All right, superintendent's district.
Nothing at this time.
Other district business. I have other district business. I need 2 of our board members to review the closed session minutes from September 21st, 2017 through May 17th, 2018. So I need to assign 2 members to review those closed minutes. Beth and Ron? Sure. Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Hate to put you on the spot. I did. Thank you. All right. If not, any correspondence or comments from members at this time? If not, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. Closed session, we will discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of employees, establish sale or lease price of real estate, consider sale, purchase, securities, investments, investment contracts, and litigation. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Back in open session. Okay.
I would ask for a motion to approve the administrative restructuring as discussed in closed session, which would include a savings of $189,900 over the prior year, a reduction of 6.5%. For the remaining administrators, the average increase would be 3% for a total of $80,597.
Motion, looking for a motion.
So
Entertain a
moved.
motion. Your second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any additional discussion? Anybody? Any additional comments?
Yeah.
We're okay?
Are there any questions?
This is
No, it's,
clarity.
oh, just for administrators, not on me.
Not on an annual, for those administrators on an annual contract.
Yes, on an annual
Okay, for
contract.
those administrators on an annual
That's what I just
contract.
wanted to say.
Got that part, Linda?
Yes.
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 Okay, so any additional clarity or questions regarding that? All right. Do a roll call, please.
Yes. Mrs. Blatz?
Aye.
Ms. Janice Doyle?
Aye.
Mr. Lucetti?
Aye.
Mr. Lulo?
Hi.
Mr. Janik?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Kirkland?
Aye. No other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. So moved. Motion, is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you for your time.